All right, my guest this morning is none other than Paul Porter. He has been a force in radio, music, and television for 4 decades. His deep, seductive voice has resonated on the airwaves of many of the nation's top-rated radio stations, and he spent 10 years at BET as program director, consultant, and on-air talent. Porter's expertise and activism have established him as a thought leader in the radio and music industry, and he is often sought out by major media outlets including CNN, MSNBC, Sirius XM, Entertainment Tonight, and Fox News to comment on music, culture, and race. He is the co-founder of music industry nonprofit IndustryEars.com and music and culture website raprehab.com, and currently serves as program director at Orlando's low-power FM station, The Wire 98.5. He has recently released, or will be releasing, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, his book, BlackOut, My 40 Years in the Music Business. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Reading Circle microphones, Paul Porter. Paul, good morning.
Hey, Mark, how are you this morning, bro?
Hey, man, I'm doing all right. I ain't no need to complain. As I said, we in the Thanksgiving season, and I'm just thankful and grateful to still be alive.
Glad to be here, man. I love Saturdays.
Oh, well, I'm glad to have you. I tell you, when you inboxed me, I was sharing with the listening audience, in the 6 o'clock hour, how social media has truly been a blessing in terms of meeting folks. And so when you inboxed me and you were saying the timing is perfect, I think you're releasing the book, or it's upcoming, or which way is it?
No, the book's out.
The book is out. Okay.
Yeah.
So you inboxed me saying the perfect timing, and I was like, man, perfect is time, because I had some openings between now and the end of the year. So today worked, and I'm glad that you were able to rise and join me. I'm also glad you're on the East Coast. You were sharing you're calling out of Florida.
Yeah, man. I'm down beach side of Orlando, man, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, I know that's right, because you just heard me forecast snow.
Yeah. I love the Northeast, but there's nothing like having shorts on in the last day of November.
I know that's right. I know that is truly right. And again, because I'm a warm weather person, I was born in August. I am definitely a summer and, warm weather baby. So this time of year is kind of like my most challenging time. Even though I'm grateful and thankful to be alive, this is like my most challenging time of year with the weather. So we're going to talk this morning about 2 areas that is near and dear to me, and that is music as well as in the radio industry. And you've had an opportunity to be a little bit of both, and I say a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I'm also looking at your bio on one of your sites, saying you were doing some campaigns and voiceover television and radio for AT&T and HBO. And when I saw AT&T, I worked for them for like 15 years. I was like, okay. So there's a lot of commonalities here. So
Good, man.
So let's talk.
Well, it's been 40 years, so I've been blessed to do an array of things. That's why I decided to tie them all together and put it in my book, BlackOut.
I know that's right. So all right. When did you start the BlackOut project? And then we're going to go all the way back into how did you get into music, radio, and so on. Matter of fact, maybe I'll do that first, and then we'll work our way to the BlackOut project. How did you get into the industry? What got you in?
Man, I grew up in Jamaica, Queens, man, and back in the day when I grew up, a couple of my friends on my block, their parents were in the music industry. And Mr. Stroud, who divorced his wife, married Nina Simone when I was a kid. So I used to go to Nina Simone's house on the weekends with my 2 boys, Bucky and Rennie. And that was the start of it. And another guy on my block's name worked with Dick Griffey. So I got a taste of the industry as a little guy, going with Mr. Stroud, and he used to be at RCA, and I remember meeting the main ingredient, and one thing led to another. I went to college and got involved with the college radio station at Northeastern up in Boston, and I was in love with the music there. When I was a kid in Queens, we used to ride our bikes, man. I remember when Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud came out.
Right.
We would ride our bikes to James Brown's house. He had a house on Linden Boulevard, and we would sit outside just looking to see JB behind the black wrought iron fence. And I got to college, man. I was in love with music. It was the 70s, and, you know, Boston was a different town. And it led to college radio, and that turned into, you know, 1982. I got a job in D.C. Donnie Simpson hired me at KISS, which was NBC, and it started there, man. The love was real, man, but college radio was the real blessing. I got to work with some good people in college, and it was funny. My college station, a guy named Jay Dixon, who came up with me. He's program director in Philly. He was at BLS and Hot. Wendy Williams, Darius Walker was the CNN bureau chief. Mike Shannon, who's on Sirius. My college station, man, really did well. And a lot of those friends are still in the industry now.
Well, you know what? I'm glad to hear you say that, because you're actually, and as far as the listening audience is concerned, in my mind, we try to keep it seamless. That they don't know the difference between whether it's a college station versus a commercial station. I'm actually broadcasting out of a college station right now. And now I'm beyond my college years, but I'm one of the few alumni that actually still maintain a show here. And for me, like I said, I try to make the experience as seamless as possible. They can't tell if they're listening to a commercial, professional station versus the college station, which in my mind still needs to be just as professional. So I'm glad to hear you say that. I guess what's interesting to me is that the connections that you were able to make to get where you got to.
Yeah, but I mean, relationship capital is everything. At least
Correct.
It has been for me, you know, and building it and reaching out and touching people, man. You never know, man. The receptionist turns into the CEO and vice versa, man. The first time I was at a professional radio station, WILD, the record rep back then was Sylvia Rohn, and she's probably the biggest, you know, industry person in terms of running labels, at least black, in the last 40 years. And, you know, I got to meet people early on and built relationships. It's funny. I saw an old picture of me in college with Nile Rodgers at a party. You know, so it's been an experience, and it's been good. It's not always bright and sunny, man. The industry, I've been fired more times than I've been hired, and that's hard to do.
Well, you know what? It's interesting you would say that, because there's a young lady, and again I say young, you know, it's relative, but Delilah. You probably heard of Delilah. She says the same thing in her book. She says the same thing in her book, that she's been fired more than she's been hired. And I'm glad you brought that up too, because many in the listening audience, or many people in general, see the media, radio, television, music, what have you. They see that as this glamorous profession, or this glamorous career, not realizing the ups and downs of it.
I mean, it's changed so much. I mean, radio back in the day paid a lot more. I got to work with Frankie Crocker at WBLS and programming Kathy Hughes' stations, and they've all been different. Some pay well. You know, when Kathy Hughes fired me, I got 2 weeks' pay. When I was with NBC and I got my severance there, it was $150,000. You know, I walked away happy, but it's not. It's changed, and right now, you know, personalities really aren't in control. Corporations are, and that's what I talk about in my book. And the same thing with music, man. There was a different sense of music, and it's not because I'm old. It's because I studied it. It's less balance. You know, back in the day, a top radio station would play a top 5 record every 4 to 5 hours. Right now, it's every 60 to 70 minutes. So, you know, in a 7-day period, you would hear a top record 45 times. And now at a commercial station, you'll hear it 130 times. You know, the repetition is just let's cut out a lot of the taste of the and the culture of music over the last 20 years.
Correct.
And it's not going to change unless we change it.
No, you're absolutely right. And again, interesting you would say that because Thanksgiving Day, my daughters, they were playing, and they're like in their 20s, 18, 20s, and all that. So now they're playing all the music from like the 60s, 70s, or what have you. And my commentary was, I don't think some of the stuff, not all of it, but I don't think some of the stuff is going to be being played on a Thanksgiving Day 30, 40, 50 years from now, like that music was being played. Stuff like Marvin Gaye and Earth, Wind, and Fire, so forth. And like I don't think some of the stuff that I'm hearing today is going to be played on a Thanksgiving Day 30 years from now. I could be wrong. But based on what you're saying, unless we make some changes...
Yeah, it's a different era. I call it microwave music. We went from lyricists to the lyrically challenged. And,
right.
and unfortunately now, music is more visual when it comes to commercial music than it is musical. I mean, we've been stuck in computers and samples for the last 30 years. So if I'm a 15-year-old black kid growing up now, all I get to see is Cardi B on Instagram and some of the things you don't get to see bands and people playing. And that's where the passion has been lost and the connection from artists. And that's painful for me. And the songs now, you know, in radio and research, there's three categories that always matter: popularity, recognition, and fatigue. And a lot of these songs in radio, we call them quick burn songs, where folks get tired of them after a couple of weeks.
Right.
And then there's songs that I call anthem songs that I can hear 50 times in a row and fall in love with them, and they sound just as good. Those don't happen as much. They come, the DJ Khaled's and some of the artists of today, they're highly successful, but for a short time, you know. And back in the day, you could put on a Luther Vandross album and play it for a year. That doesn't happen anymore.
That's correct. Now, see, I am so glad that I'm having this conversation with you, because for me, it confirms that I'm not crazy. Because a lot of time when you try to have conversations like this with people, my response would be, "Oh, you think too deep." I'm like, no, it's not. Yeah. If you know music at all, anything about it. And again, I was sharing, I've been playing piano since I was 8. I started taking piano lessons when I was 8. I've had the opportunity to play in bands and had the opportunity to play in choirs. I played for the Air Force Choir, my church choirs. I mean, when I was in high school, I was in the jazz band and in the concert choirs. I mean, I've had opportunity to really wonderful opportunities. But if you know anything about music, as I was saying, and you do, because I could tell the road that you're going down and what you're saying, you're absolutely right. And for me to hear somebody else say it, because it's rare, because most of the time whenever I start picking apart music like that, folks will give me that kind of like, "Oh, you're looking too deep into it." But just like you said, whenever back to the bands and all that, everything for the most part is electronic now. And it's funny, I'll listen to a piece from the 50s, 60s, or whatever it is, and that's what I'm listening to, is the instrumentation. I'm listening to the bass player. I'm listening to the keyboardist. I'm listening to the brass section and all of that. I mean, a lot of times they had orchestras, not just bands. They had orchestras. So the changeover it really is something. And our kids coming up, they really don't know the difference or can appreciate musically, or shall I say, the history.
Yeah, because there's no balance. Look, I love it all. I was lucky enough, just over 3 years ago, I got my own low-power FM, bought a radio station in Orlando. I could have done an oldies format. I'm 60 years old, but I'm doing hip-hop and R&B right in downtown Orlando. Our station's 4 miles from Disney. And the problem is, and it's not a problem, but it's the balance in the music, the content of the records. 85% of the records. I'm also on the board at Parents Television Council, which is a huge nonprofit that sort of like a media think tank in terms of some of the issues in in terms of content and video and music. We did a study. It's still up on the web. It's called the Rap on Rap. We did a study of, I used to work at BET for a long time, of BET and MTV videos. It was about 11 years ago. And 85% of the content was, misogyny,
right,
bling, violence, and drugs.
Correct.
And it's always, there are no more love songs anymore.
Correct.
I call them drug songs because everybody's talking about, from Future, the artist Future, everything is sex and everything is drugs, and there's a different style of lazy singing that's going on. And I'm okay with it, but all I say is just give us some balance. Give us some balance. That's my fight. That's my issue. Words have power.
Yes, indeed.
And there's not enough going into it. A lot of the songs I hear sound like demo songs ready for a real artist to sing, but they're out going up the charts. As big as Drake is in the hip-hop world, he dominates.
Right.
From 2010 to 2020, Drake has had a top 10 record on the Billboard charts. It's like 508 weeks out of 520 weeks over a decade. Do you know how incredible that is? But I don't think of Drake like I think of Stevie Wonder.
Correct.
I don't think of Drake like I think of Prince or Whitney Houston, even though he'll make a lot more money, has a lot more exposure, but it's a different connection than it is, 20, 25 years ago. And that's where black music has suffered painfully. And the reason why is not, audience demand. It's, the corporate culture that says, once they made the flip to hip-hop and R&B, they decided to kill R&B.
Correct.
And there's no more groups like LTD and New Birth and all these bands and the Commodores that would travel 5 or 6 people around. It became one person and a DAT tape or a track date and no bands because it was easier to move around, even though when you go to white radio now, Ed Sheeran, Ariana Grande are doing R&B songs
right.
that are more soulful and have song structure and instrumentation that you won't hear on black radio. So you can't tell me that music is not alive. It's just when it comes to the black format,
correct,
it's quite limited. So you get the Urban AC, the Tom Joyner, the Steve Harvey station that plays music from the 70s and 80s all the time, but they rarely play or support new artists. And there's a lot of talented jazz R&B artists and singers and bands, but they don't get the exposure.
No, you're absolutely right. And again, I saw in your bio about telling the truth. You are speaking the truth, whether folks want to hear that or not. And a lot of times, your average person listening to the radio, they don't give this much thought to it. But if you are into the industry and you really understand, as I said a couple of minutes ago, how this thing works, then Paul is telling the truth. Even to the point, I heard you say you're on a parent council. When I'm not doing radio, my day job, if you will, is an educator. And over the years, I've seen even the kids, the interest in like joining the band or taking a musical interest, that's pretty much gone. Kids, they for whatever reason, there's no interest in that now, which kind of blows me away because I'm only 3 years younger than you. And when I was coming through, we had guys that would lead a football team to go play in the band. Because our band was patterned after Florida A&M and Grambling and all those big schools like that. Our high school band was patterned after that, and they had notoriety all around the state, so forth and so on. And so we had guys that would lead a football team to go learn an instrument so they could march in the band. But we don't see that now. I mean, the superintendent is struggling to put together an all-city band because we can't get enough kids from any one school to make up the band. So back to your point of balance, even from musicians coming up the pike. At least here, from what I'm seeing in my area, there's very few because the interest is just not there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not in the school system. I mean, I remember playing an instrument because you had to.
Right.
And learning about music but they cut all those programs out decades ago. And like I said, we're into this microwave generation. You know, in the book BlackOut, I talk about the changes, but the most important thing that has killed and stymied music culture is pay for play and payola. You know, when I got to BET as program director, I started and I had moved back. I was at New York working at BLS and doing voiceovers. I checked into my hotel, did my first week of work at BET. At the time, I was programming the network. It was in 66 million homes. And I get a FedEx on a Saturday. It says Karen Klein. And I'm like, what is this about? I take it up to the room. I open the FedEx. It has 3 envelopes in it with $100 bills totaling $30,000. No note, just from Karen Klein.
Wow.
That was my first take of big-time payola. And back in the day, you know, they would fly you to the Teddy Pendergrass party or get you front row seats in the limo to the Whispers or whatever. But things change when corporations and, you know, the Consolidation Act of Telecommunications Consolidation Act of 1996 was the big thing that allowed companies like Clear Channel, which is iHeart now.
Right.
They had about 80 stations, and 2 years later, they had 1,200 stations. So how do you take ownership? Well, by syndication. Black radio's killed by syndication. It's the most syndicated format where you hear the Breakfast Club or, you know, Tom Joyner, Steve Harvey, and so Michael Bass in so many markets. So you hear the same thing, same news, same information, and you don't get to local issues or local musicians anymore. So, you know, back in the day, there was a sound in Detroit, a sound in the East or the West. Now when a record happens, it happens in the same time, same rotation all over the country. And that's controlled by money. And payola is illegal if you don't state it. And in my book, BlackOut, I talk about it. I've been on panels. I've been with FCC commissioners. I've been on Capitol Hill. But it's as old as apple pie. But it's affecting music culture, and that's why I talk about it. I wrote about it, and I keep fighting for it. But, you know, it's hard, man. I feel at times I'm in a losing battle, but I'm not stopping.
And you know what? Don't stop, because it's interesting, because whenever I was reading the description of the book, you were talking about the corruption in the industry. And see, that's where, again, for the most part, people think of the bling and the glamour and the fame and not realizing, I mean, and the music industry in and of itself, just like anything else, entertainment, acting, whatever. Yes, there is a cutthroat side of it, and people really don't realize. That's why a book like yours is very important for getting the word out, because again, it's not something top of mind. It's not something people see the entertainer, they hear the song, and all they know is, oh, I'm going to get paid, I'm going to be famous, everybody's going to know me, I'm going to travel, not realizing the behind the scenes. And I'm always interested in behind the scenes. That's why I can't wait to read your book. I'm going to, I usually don't get to read the book till after the interviews are over from cover to cover. I skim it. But I can't wait to be able to get into the nits and gnats of it, because it's about behind the scenes. These are the things. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the good thing, all the books that of course my book's on Amazon, but I sell it at blackoutthebook.com. And everybody that buys it from my site, I put my name and my cell phone in it. So the conversations over the last year and a half from people that have read the book, and it's industry folks, guys that have been in the business 30 years, just don't even know how the business runs when it comes to the corporate corporate side. You could have, there's a PD in Philly, Derek Corbett at DAS and Power 99. He seems like he has power, but his power is by I Heart Chicago that plays the music for Philadelphia. So those voices, like there used to be a guy in Philly, Butterball, who would break artists and build artists, but they don't do that anymore. They wait for stats and they wait for the whole country to do things. So we lost the regional feel when it comes to commercial radio of the places that we live. And people don't want to talk about it, the pay-for-play side, and it goes back to Alan Freed and rock and roll. And think about it. This country is a corporate capitalistic society.
Correct.
The music industry in 2018 made $43 billion. So if you think you're going to just make a record and it's going to become a national hit and you're going to be rich, well, you don't understand the music business. And those words are connected. There's a business side of this. And that's what I try to stress when I talk to young folks. It's not an accident that somebody becomes number one. It's not organic anymore.
Right.
And yeah, you can start something on Snapchat or Instagram, but the artists that last and make money have money put behind them to get them to that next level plateau.
That's absolutely right. As a matter of fact, it's interesting that you brought that up. And for listening audience, if you just joined me, I hope you've been with me since 6, but certainly since 7. My guest this morning is Paul Porter, and we're talking about the behind the scenes in the music industry. And it is more than meets the eye. And just as Paul was saying, most of our music today, not to say that it always hasn't been to a degree, but is really supported by corporations. And this is where I'm going with this next question, Paul, because we were talking about hip hop and rap, so forth and so on. Now, for me as an African-American male, I cringe at the use of the word nigger, or the N-word, if you will. But yet in much of our rap, I mean, the rappers, they throw that out like nothing. And most of our kids listen to that and they emulate it. But and what I share with them when I'm talking to kids is like, you need to understand, back to this money being made, you got a corporation most likely run or owned by Caucasians that is letting that go out. So to a degree, it's like you're making money off of something that's degrading you as an African American. That's whenever I get into the you think too deep conversations. But when you start talking corporation, that's exactly what's going on. If whoever the rapper is making that much money, do you know what the owner or the company is making from it?
Like I just stated, in 2018, $43 billion were made. Guess what percentage artists made?
Right.
12%. 12%. So Drake in royalties, like I said, he's been the most successful, hip hop and R&B artist in the past 15 years. He's made like $29 million in royalties. Well, the record label has made over $300 million in royalties. So, of course we see one rich guy, but it's the guys in the blue suits that are collecting all the money from publishing and, and it's always going to be that way. But that's what I talk about in the book, how it really happens and who the money goes to, who pays the money.
Right.
And if you follow the money, you can follow an industry.
No, that's absolutely right, because I'm looking here, you're talking about how, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, about how corporations erased black identity from black radio and Main Street black music. Do you think that's by design, or is it just the capitalistic society?
I really think it's by design, man, because it was easier. Look, I mean, there's still bands in rock and roll and modern music, but there's not that when it comes to black music departments. They go for the quick fixes. They have the smaller budgets, even though hip hop is the number one format on the planet in terms of streaming and everything else. But when you look at concerts, Ed Sheeran made like $900 million last year worldwide on tour. So that doesn't happen, even though that doesn't happen for hip hop. They're performing in small arenas and clubs and nightclubs. And every now and then you have those big super tours, but it's a whole different visual, you know. It's a whole different thing in terms of uniting audiences with artists.
No, you're right, and it's amazing to me how this conversation is linked back to a conversation I was having with my kids on Thanksgiving, because we were talking about the whole music thing based on what we were listening to. And I was sharing with them back in the late 70s, early 80s at Giant Stadium, which is Metropolitan Life Stadium now. They used to have the Budweiser Superfest. I mean, and from 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning to 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, all the groups, you just sit there in the stadium, the Whispers, you name it, they came up. I mean, group after Commodores, group after group after group. Over the years, that left, that moved away. Didn't hear of those super tours like that anymore. But I remember going to the Budweiser Superfest 2 or 3 or 4 times at what is now MetLife Stadium. And like I said, all the up-and-coming groups as well as the established groups performed throughout the day. And now that you just said that, I said, you know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. So is it because we don't have like the Barry Gordy's, like the Motowns, and even Barry, when I've read all the stuff on Motown and Barry, about how, for the most part, Barry got the money and the artist didn't get much of that either. But is it because we don't have the Motowns anymore, that the industry in terms of black radio and black music is not being pushed as it was?
I just don't think we have the decision makers that are bold enough to fight for things anymore. You know, a lot of my friends who are in the music industry and power situations have gotten soft, man. They're just soft. They don't fight for anything anymore. So if you're president of Rock Nation, like a friend of mine, you make $2 million and you sort of are protecting your job instead of being creative, where black culture and music culture has been a leader for a long time, but it's just been led in the wrong direction. And I don't blame corporations. I blame audiences for not making the choice. But unfortunately, it's hard to find choices or programs like yours that talk about real issues. And look, I've been on every network. I've been on television in 140 countries, but it's hard to get people. And I've taken on battles with Rihanna and MTV and Snoop Dogg and some people that are my friends just because of content. But getting it to the messenger is controlled, and we're not going to have this. My son worked with Steve Harvey for 8 years as a producer. I've never been on Steve Harvey. I've never been on Tom Joyner, but I've been on ABC World News multiple times on Entertainment Tonight. But Steve Harvey had a deal with BET with his gospel, so he wouldn't want to talk about BET. Tom Joyner, the same way. So when you get to a certain level of black popularity, your pockets are lined by these corporations, and you know, Viacom used to be owned. Bob Johnson was the owner when I was there until they made the switch to Viacom. And it doesn't mean it was any better with Bob Johnson, but he was in control. But, you know, there's nobody in control anymore that cares about black music.
Well, you see, that's why I was asking the question about because historically, if you look at Motown, if you've read any of the work on any of the groups that came through Motown, kind of sort of similar in terms of payment. Because I was blown away as I studied the history on that in terms of the Stevie Wonders and the Michael Jacksons and the Diana Rosses, how much you were talking the percentage a couple of minutes ago, the 12% or whatever. I was amazed again, because again, you look at it from afar and think, oh, I would love to do that. But then now you've added another mix to it where it's almost like our music is intentionally or consciously being faded out, which takes me back to, I don't know if you remember Dreamgirls, the original on Broadway Dreamgirls, but there's a scene, there's some scenes in there where they talk about how our music is always taken. Like we would have all the rhythm and all that stuff, and then it would get watered down and smoothed out and then reintroduced in the Caucasian market. There's a whole scene on it. So as I'm talking to you, that's what popped back into my mind was that scene in Dreamgirls.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's real. I mean, we've always been ripped.
Right.
But it appears now that we have, you know, big success stories in terms of Jay-Z and Beyonce. But, you know, so many folks on the smaller end are getting robbed. Robbed literally.
Right.
And now record labels sign 360 deals. That's been the big thing over the last 10 years where they control everything. They get a percentage if you're, you know, a game show host
right.
on television. They get a percentage of that, you know, $15 million that Usher makes, you know, on his television show, or Alicia Keys. They get money for all those things, and that's where it's changed. Before, artists used to control their tour money and everything else, but now the labels smartened up. They know they can put you in situations in terms of branding and products, so they all get a piece of that.
That's absolutely amazing. And folks, this is what I mean by behind the scenes. Everything is not what it appears to be, and everything is connected. You like to connect the dots in terms of, you were talking about content earlier. I know there was always like this kind of like big debate between like the Queen Latifahs and some of the folks that originally started hip hop, if you will, because actually hip hop has always been around, but the ones that really kind of pushed it, you know, back in the 80s or 70s or what have you, they was always debating on this whole content area. Back to what you were saying about even they feel some of their colleagues have gotten soft in terms of content.
Yeah.
That the hip hop of now is not the same original hip hop.
Hey, there's a great documentary I recommend folks find. It's called Beyond Beats and Rhymes by Byron Hurt. It's the best documentary I've ever seen about the music industry. It's won awards. Byron, matter of fact, he lives in Plainfield, New Jersey, and he did a great job talking to heads of black music. And there's the scene in there with Russell Simmons where he talks to Russell about content. And, you know, Russell was defending it's the story of the streets.
Right.
And hip-hop isn't the story of the streets anymore. It's
right, that's story. The debate. Right, that was the debate between, if for lack of a better word, the old heads versus the new heads.
Yeah. And hip-hop has changed in terms of content because you heard happy songs. You heard songs that would uplift you. You know, there are no more Chuck D's and Public Enemy. Matter of fact, Chuck was nice enough to write liner credits on the back of my book with Joy Reid. And Chuck's been a friend of mine for a long time, but we've cut out the KRS ones and the uplifting, the Fight the Power, and Brothers. You know, so those songs are inspiration, and commercial radio shuns acts like that. But there's a lot of good hip-hop. You know, the Lecrae's, there's a guy named Sho Baraka. I mean, there's so many artists that have positive messages, and that's what I try to play on my station, The Wire in Orlando, a mixture of today's commercial records. But I get tired of, you know, twerking and booties all the time.
Right.
And we've been stuck in this syndrome for a long time. And it's women objectifying women. It's a hypersexualized format now. So if you have a 12-year-old and they're taking this steady diet, they think that, you know, throwing money up in the air and making it rain is normal, but it's not.
No, you're absolutely right. And I'm glad you brought that point up because, again, as an educator dealing with children, one of the things we're constantly trying to help them understand is kind of like that old computer thing, garbage in, garbage out. that if what you're constantly hearing, you heard it earlier, you said it earlier about rather than being love songs, they're drug songs. If what you're constantly hearing is kill your mama, kill your daddy, kill the cops, kill this, do that, at some point you're taking that in. And if that's all you're hearing, I mean, you got you 40 years in the music business, so, and you would know in radio, there were just certain things that we could not play on the air 40 years ago. I mean, you could not play anything with the F word. You could not play any. You couldn't play any of that. And now I can hear folks going around the song literally blaring. I'm trying to think of that one. I think it was Kanye. I'm a dumb F, something like that. I mean, you could hear that blaring in car radios, and this is going out through radio. And I was like, wow, has it changed?
Well, there's a story in my book BlackOut that was my epiphany. I was working in New York at Hot 97 and KISS, and I was volunteering at a school in Queens, my own neighborhood that I grew up with. And there was a young sister in the 8th grade. Her name was Latia, and she gave me a note, and it said, Mr. Paul, get this record off the radio. And it was a song by Raw Digger. And when I heard it on the air, it just hit a note to me because the chorus was, gotta beat that bitch with a bat.
Right.
And I heard it over and over. We used to day part to edit songs like that.
Right.
And then I looked at Latia and I said, well, why are you upset at this song? And she started crying. She said, my mom is in Roosevelt Hospital. She got beat up by my dad with the bat, and the kids are making fun of me. Well, I took that note to MS New York, where I was working at the time, that had Hot 97 and KISS, and I brought it to the program director and the market manager, and they basically told me, like, stop being so sensitive. We do good things in the community. Well, me being the rebel that I am, I emailed the owner, Jeff Smolian, who still owns MS Broadcasting, and told him what the issue was in terms of content and mentioned some other records. To my surprise, he answered me 4 hours later because I was emailing from one of his stations and said, no way we play records like that. Well, the records came off the air, and about 4 days later, and there was a memo in the studio, and I was the whistleblower. That's when I learned the term whistleblower.
Right.
And everybody at the station was upset at me. And I never worked at that station again. I met with a guy named Barry Mayo. It's in the book. And he said, man, you went over my head. You can't do stuff like this. We do things for the community. But I said, Barry, we're like drug dealers. This because we give away turkeys and do a benefit concert. If all the music is mentally depriving the kids and making them crazy, we got to stand up for that.
Right.
Well, I never worked again, and that's when I started a nonprofit, and I've been out lecturing and talking about it ever since.
I see, that is absolutely amazing, because it literally, some of these lyrics are poisoning not just the kids. Because like I said, while I was listening to you, I went on Google, that wonderful thing, that search engine, and I pulled up. The name of the song is I'm a Sick F. I love it. It's on YouTube. And let me see. I can't even see the words on here. I won't say it because I may not work again. But in any event, it's I'm a sick F. I love the quick F, so forth and so on. But this was on the radio. I'm a sick F. I like a quick F. I like my sucked. I'll buy you a sick truck, so forth. But when I pulled up next to a car that was playing it, and I was like, wow, that would have never made the air years ago. But
but that's why I said we go from lyricist to the lyrically challenged.
Right.
Even the lyrics in hip hop, that whole stories now, they've been so dumbed down and quick fixed. It's painful to listen to when you know the history of hip hop and music.
Correct.
So of course things always get worse over time. We see the market getting saturated, but what do we do? How do we have those discussions? And that's what happened too in the 90s. there were stations back in the 70s and 80s that you would get in, the whole family would like listening to the radio.
Right.
You hear everything on the radio station. Well, they split them up.
Right.
They put the older folks on urban AC stations and the younger folks on urban. And once they separated that whole rap and R&B and hip-hop thing and made older black folks listen to oldies and the younger folks, that's why parents don't know what their kids are listening to.
Correct.
And unfortunately, it's been 2 generations of hip-hop parents.
Right.
So a lot of them are blinded, and they don't know. The 40-year-old parent grew up on hip-hop, so they've been playing these messages and images to their kids, and I deal with a lot the subconscious mind and the conscious mind.
Correct.
And subconsciously, just like when I heard James Brown when I was a kid, I don't know, 10, 11, and Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. And I remember back then I was scared to say I was black because black wasn't good. I wanted to look like my boys, Bucky and Reddy, with Puerto Rican. They were light and had long hair.
Yeah.
But once I heard that record, I wasn't a Negro anymore. I've been black ever since. I'm not even African American now. I'm still black, but it's how that record impacted me.
Correct.
And changed my life. And at the same time, I grew up in a broken home. My dad left at 7. But those records that were on the 45 that, Marvin Gaye as a kid, Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing.
Right.
I learned about love in some of those songs. And later in life, when I'm in college and the floaters were float on and they had a line in there, my name is Paul.
That's right.
That used to be my rap line when I'm, slow dancing at a party. But that intimacy of music where you can hear words, like one of my favorite groups is Maze and Frankie Beverly.
Frankie Beverly, that's right.
Like when I heard Joy and Pain when I was in college, it just took me to another level because that's what life is, ups and downs. And music culture used to talk about it, and you could feel, and that's the difference in the black community. I'm doing a lecture series now. I call it Hip-Hop Zip Code Mentality because it all depends where you're from.
Right.
How these songs impact you. So, the white kids in the suburbs, so when they hear about crack and violence and drugs and guns, they're looking at it from a different level. But when the kid in the hood hears how much money you can make, they're going to go out and try to sell those dime bags of crack. It's a different mindset, and it's much deeper than we ever want to delve into.
Correct.
That's why I got a great book. That's why it's a great message. Look, I got a website. It's called raprehab.com. There's a section on there, brain food.
Right.
And the site's been up 9 years. There's a lot of powerful articles on it. C-SPAN gave me 90 minutes, and I know everybody's not readers, but if you Google BlackOut, C-SPAN, Paul Porter, it's the best 90 minutes of television. And I'm not saying because I did it, but we talked about all the real issues. And my problem is parents don't know how to talk to their kids about
Correct.
music. And until they learn that, nothing's going to change. You just can't let your kids have the headphones on without knowing what they're doing. But they normally don't. And that's why I put the website up. That's why there's plenty of stuff on the internet. That's why C-SPAN gave it. And that's why I wrote a book. My mission is to educate parents so they can talk about it. You just can't say the music's crap or it's hypersexualized. You got to show them examples of where it is and what it used to do. And when they see that, they know they are being fooled. And it was the same thing with MTV and BET with music videos. there were always artists that appeared to be rich and wealthy. And, I've been to music video shoots all over the country. It's all rented. A couple of them made money, but most people, the rented cars and the rented everything else. So it's a fake world out there.
Right.
Instagram and the internet has sort of made it a lot easier to mask what's really going on, and that is painful.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And you hit it right on the head when you were talking about the subconscious versus the conscious. Because, again, as we were saying, we're taking that stuff in, and folks really either don't understand or don't want to understand. I don't know which. Maybe it's a little both, that the impact that music has. And now, seeing again, even back in our day, headphones in and of themselves weren't the method of listening to music. You kind of heard everything was the boom box, so forth. But now you're literally, as with these headphones, pumping it straight into you. And I was sitting here chuckling to myself because you were talking about as the family listening to the radio, whatever. I remember and my mom just turned 81, but I remember as a kid.
God bless.
Thank you. As a kid, we'd be in the car, and Donna Summer's "Love to Love You, Baby" would come on, and whenever she would get to my mother would turn the radio off indignantly. I was like, me and my sister would look like, "Why are you turning that off?" But she would never make it now.
14 minutes of Donna Summer. And that was hell-raising. Look, I worked at WILD in Boston. I remember when Parliament was out.
Oh, yeah.
And the record was, the chorus was, "We Need the Funk."
Yes, that's right.
But people thought funk was F-U-C.
Correct.
Okay. And churches complained. And we had to explain, but there were years at BET when we would blurt out, back then 40s and Colt 45s were popular. We used to blurt them out in music videos. But all those fights, all were lost over time because of money. I remember when Bob Johnson called me because I wouldn't play certain videos when I got there. And the funny thing was, this is 1999. I'm at BET as program director. Well, I took like 60% of the songs out of the system. Well, guess what? Our ratings went up 45% in like 30 days.
Not surprised.
But the labels complained because I was playing less and they put a lot of pressure on. If Def Jam at the time was spending, $6-7 million with BET, I got that call to say, "How come you're not playing Kevin Liles' record?"
Right.
And I would say, well, put the record in, and that battle went back and forth. I would say I would do it, and the labels, and eventually they got me fired because I changed up their system.
Exactly, and you're right. That battle, it does appear, and I shared that story about my mom flicking the car radio off with Donna Summer on, because back to your point of parents understanding what their children are listening to. That if you really understood what the messaging was in there, or what it's just not a matter of, like you said, the beats and the rap and it's more than that. And if a child or an adult, for that matter, is just constantly listening to that over and over again, and you gave the stats earlier about how many times you hear a song now compared with back in the day, if you will.
Oh yeah, if you hear a song every 70 minutes, but here's what people are also fooled with. Everybody says streaming is the new everything that gives you a chance. But if you look at charts, the records that are with the big three labels in terms of on radio and Billboard are the records that do the same in streaming. Because streaming, Spotify and Pandora, those playlists, there's payola in that to give records exposure. So, and as young artists, people think you just stick it on YouTube, throw it against the wall, and you have a hit. They'll spend, $10,000 on a music video and wonder why it's never getting played, because the market is so saturated and fragmented. For independent artists, it's hard. That's why there's not an interview I won't do, and some audiences might have 5 listeners, and some might have 50,000. But everybody's important when it comes to trying to get this message out. And the problem is nobody cares in the commercial world to share the story, to share what the issues are, and to talk about music as a business. When I wrote BlackOut, the first person that called me was Harvard Law School. And a guy named Brian Price, who's been head of the legal law school department, clinical professor, brought me in to speak to some of the brightest kids on the planet. And unfortunately, the difference is, on paper, the business seems one way. When you tell them what really happens in the business and how important they can change the culture, it's the first time that light goes off, because school doesn't teach you that.
Correct.
It doesn't teach you responsibility. It doesn't teach you content. So what goes on at these companies in the business world is separately different from what they promote in the commercial world. And that's my issue. If you had hypersexuality and toxic masculinity in the workplace, you'd be exiled the same day. But it's fine to market that to the masses. I put a story in there about Jimmy Iovine, and Jimmy Iovine led Interscope and Dr. Dre and Eminem, and he's the Berry Gordy of hip hop. But when I went to Jimmy Iovine's house in the late 90s, I forgot, in Alpine Hills or somewhere in Jersey.
Right, that sounds about right.
It was a different world. His kids were riding horses. His kids weren't listening to the artists that he developed. They had a separate world outside of his commercial world. And the same with Bob Johnson. Bob Johnson, who, I've talked about in battle, his kids were on the ranch in Virginia, and Mrs. Sheila Johnson didn't let our kids watch BET. And Bob Johnson is a part in my book where we had a meeting. He said, we had a meeting with BET staffers. We were trying to get a union. And he said, look, this place is not for you to make money. It's for me and my family to make money. He told everybody in the room that.
He was straight up.
Yeah, he was straight, and I appreciate it. But Black Entertainment Television, which started off
right
at a core, there were shows, Teen Summit and different shows, and the gospel show. But all those shows have been replaced with reality
correct
shows and the same messages. Now you'll get T.I. and Tiny instead of, Teen Summit, where you discuss some of the issues. And that's where we're lost at.
Correct. I could not. And again, what comes to mind is, and again, working where I am and with the population, I always talk about, folks don't realize that we're actually taking a part in our own pimping, that we're being pimped and we're taking a part in it. We're playing a role in our own pimping, if you will. And what you just described, that brought back that to my mind. It's like, oh my God. And you're right, because we used to say the same thing in terms of like what you were saying about the other young man. We would say that we tell the kids that about Snoop. Like, do you honestly think Snoop lives the life that he's singing about? Because he's another one that whenever he goes home, he's your, model husband, father, so forth and so on. But that's not the image they portray in the videos and so forth and so on. I remember whenever music videos and everything, when they first came out, what used to annoy the daylights out of me was whenever what was going on visually had nothing to do with what the lyrics said. I mean, that was right. If you ever wanted to get me to turn off a video, let that occur. Now, I always loved the videos that whatever the words were saying in the lyrics, the video was doing. Those I was always, but the ones that just did not connect, it just like you said, it was just a bunch of shaking and bling and this, that, and the other. Like, okay, what does that have to do with the music, with the lyrics?
Yeah.
But yeah, there is. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm just, look, 85% of this country is sheep. Black folks like,
Right.
we're going to follow the leader. Then there's another percentage that understands what's going on, but until we control the sheep, it's sort of whatever you give them, that 85% they're going to enjoy when they hear it in repetition, and you can change them. The problem is nobody wants to fight for control anymore, and nobody wants to search information and make choices. Even though the internet gives everybody a chance, it's still led by the commercial powers.
Correct.
And black folks haven't got a great piece of the internet either. The Root, who's one of the most popular black sites, are owned by the Washington Post. There's
correct.
When you think of the internet, it's also painful. Like, we've been left behind there too.
Correct.
Everybody has a place and it gives you a voice, but the most popular website for black folks in America is World Star Hip Hop. World Star Hip Hop. I forgot the tens of millions of dollars they do, but all they do is have fights with black people.
Right.
With blame, like there was something I saw on Instagram with Yo Gotti and Jay-Z. They were at a casino and they're showing Yo Gotti, a rapper from Memphis, playing a game of blackjack. One game, he bets $500,000 and loses the deal. He gets 21. Well, that story was the big hit last week on World Star Hip Hop. So that subconscious mind is drilled with these negative images. And that's why the young man or the young sister thinks of themselves differently.
Yes.
They think they got to have a big ass.
Yes.
They think they got to twerk.
Yes.
And that's why the fight's important.
No, you're absolutely right. And man, we could talk for days on this because we're speaking the same speak. And it is an uphill battle because, you're battling the green. You're battling the money. Because it's kind of like, I always tell people, and I've had folks from these industries on the show, the very industries, food industry, pharmaceutical industry, insurance industry, the very industries that you think from the top of your mind or looking at it that really are in business to save lives, they're really not. They could care less whether you live or not. Yet theoretically you would think, healthcare, pharmaceutical, food industry, they could care less whether you healthy or not. But off the top of mind, you would think. So it's the same thing that's going on in the music industry. Here you have an industry that has influence, and you would think it would be about making life better for others or uplifting folks, and they could care less.
Look, we've been singing since we came over on a slave ship.
Right.
In harmony in the bottoms of boats. Music has really been an important voice in black culture. It's not anymore.
Wow.
It's still the image that we have, but when you think about the superstars of even going back to the 80s and 90s, I mentioned the Whitneys, the Luthers, the Commodores, the Earth, Wind and Fires, the Public Enemies and hip hop and KRS-One. Well, we've replaced them with Drake and Cardi B. And it's not to hate on them,
right?
But it just shows how dumbed down the messenger has become.
That's correct.
And we don't even have black folks who can sing anymore. And we know if you go to church tomorrow, there's somebody in the choir who can sing an R&B song better than you hear on the radio. And there's a reason for that, and that's why we're having this discussion. That's why I wrote my book, BlackOut. And that's I just love the discussions that I get when folks read the book and grasp it. And when you get into it, you'll see it takes it to another level. I wrote a book that reads like a movie. I've had people like Wendy Williams. She read the book in 3.5 hours. It's a short read. It's a quick read. But she said from cover to cover, she couldn't put it down because it connected some dots for her. She never knew about how big payola was back in the day, even though she was offered it, even though, you wonder why certain things happen. But luckily, I've been in management positions in terms of program directors, in terms of record deals, and I share that in the book from a truth teller standpoint, because I have nothing to lose.
I know that's right.
Once I started talking about, look, I'm not well off, but everything I own is paid for, and I've been talking before it was paid for,
right?
And that hurt me. I lost my gig in New York. I lost my home. I used to sleep in my BMW 635 CSI because I was out when New York kicked me out, and I had to start my life over.
Right.
To fight, and I paid the cost. But guess what? I feel good. I still got all my hair.
Right.
I still can knock my 39-year-old son out with the right hook. So I'm stronger than ever. And you can't shut up messengers.
Right.
The problem is getting the people like you that have a venue to, a platform to
Correct.
send a message. And I tell everybody to hit me at Porter on Air on IG and Twitter, at Porter on Air. I believe everybody's important. I answer all questions. And I'm here to help, man. And it's real easy. Folks think I'm busy. I'm not busy. I'm busy to make progress. If you want to make progress and talk to your kids or understand what's going on, I'm here for you.
Well, man, I tell you, I know that's right. And there was a couple of things that you just said near the end that was extremely profound in terms of the image of black music is there, even though for the most part, the substance is not.
Yeah.
And that's because, again, if it's one thing or two things that everybody thinks African Americans or black people or Negroes or whatever you want to call us can do is bounce a basketball and play music, dance.
Yeah.
But and what I'm hearing from you is even that now is, like you said, the messenger has been so dumbed down, or folks that really can sing or really do have talent are either not out there or being overlooked or whatever. And I mean, it's just it is fascinating. This conversation has been just eye-opening. And I know you sent me the PDF and you're going to say, but I'm going to download it on my Kindle because you said it's in the electronic format on Amazon.
Yeah, of course.
Then I'm going to download it.
5-star reviews, Mark. 5-star
All right
reviews
now.
on Amazon.
So I'm going to be downloaded when I leave the studio. When I get home, I'm going to download it there. Like I said, I appreciate the PDF and the hardcover, you guys, but I'm going to put it on my Kindle as well.
Yeah, I'll send that to you.
And but
if any of your listeners want the book, get it at blackoutthebook.com. Blackoutthebook.com. I sign every book. I put my phone number in it. I love to talk to people. There's a Blackout the Book Facebook page. And like I said, I'm at Porter on Air on IG and Twitter. And like I said, GoogleRapRehab.com, C-SPAN Blackout with Paul Porter. That's 90 minutes on TV. And, when I caught your show, with Brian Oles, that's when I caught your show one day. I said, this brother's talking about real issues on the radio. You know how hard that is to get in black talk radio? Have you noticed that black talk radio is not happening in this country? There's not a talk format or a syndicated host next to Al Sharpton that has any name. That's scary. Wow. Like, we have so many issues we could talk about. How come there isn't a black talk network? How come there aren't shows and leaders talking about issues? Think about it. It's scary.
It really is, because I remember back in the
conservative radio,
wow,
liberal radio, and Spanish radio, but black radio's just, Megan Thee Stallion and twerk that ass.
You know what? And it's funny you should say that, because I never thought about that. I always thought, there's like with technology today, everybody has some type of a talk show or whatever. I never thought about the fact that you're right, because I remember back in the day with Gil Noble. I think he was Like It Is, because I remember my father used to watch that.
Like It Is. I went out with Gil's daughter, Leslie.
Right.
I used to love Gil. Yeah, that was the man.
So I remember shows like that, and like you just said, I didn't realize you just really brought something to mind in terms of, I didn't realize it was this much of a niche. That's where I'm going in terms of what you're saying.
Yeah, come on. And talk radio's like popular in every market, but no, there's a Black Republican show maybe or what, but that's it. They stick the brother in the overnight slot.
Right.
They don't give us prime time.
Right.
And then definitely not letting us talk, but think about it. Why? Why isn't there a talk network? The same reason why there isn't anything conscious. It's funny. I'm going to be doing something next October in D.C. It's called Conscious Con. There's no website up yet. We just started working on everything. And Conscious Con, I'm going to try to take to different cities,
right?
To this jar awareness, But the problem is nobody's talking to folks, and nobody. And I know you're on the speaker circuit. I got to fight with some people to talk about this issue.
Wow.
This Black music culture, it's not attractive, even though it's such a big part of our lives and our images. Look, I went to Africa with Stevie Wonder. We went to Cameroon, and we got there, and this is in the 90s. All the kids there thought of Black people as hip-hop because those were the artists, and to see the shirts, and it's just the power of music.
Yes,
worldwide.
Indeed. Wow.
Yeah. Worldwide.
They were all hip-hop. Wow. You're absolutely right, and again, they're just sitting here listening to you, and there are not, once again not enough people in the influential seats, and then the ones who are kind of like what you was describing with Johnson.
Yeah, they gotta make that next payment on the Tesla. They don't want to hear it,
right?
And I know them all because when I programmed BET. Everybody in America that had power used to call all the time, and some of the issues, they told me I was right when I was making some of the changes, but when it came to fighting for the after, they get selective amnesia, boy. This industry will forget in a heartbeat, and you get to learn who your friends are, and it's hard. It's hard, but, I have no problem of who I am and what I represent.
Well, as one who works with young people, I could not applaud you even more because I see what's coming up the pike, and I see what the very things that you're writing about and talking about, I see what it's doing. So I tell you what, in the future, we definitely have to get together. I never gave any thought about that whole talk radio thing piece. I didn't realize it was so few of us. But we will definitely stay in touch. We might have to, do a joint venture or something. But in any event, I'm definitely going to put the word out about the book.
When you read the book, you'll be calling me back. Because it's going to open up some eyes.
Right.
It opens up and it touches on everything. The funny thing was, I had a book deal with HarperCollins 10 years ago. They gave me $100,000 advance. The book was called The Same Songs. Payola Power in the Music Industry was the subtitle. I wrote a great book, handed it in. My boss, my editor at the time, was like, wow, this book's powerful, but we can't put it out. And I'm like, why? Because there's so many conflicts of interest. I have stories in there talking to Clive Davis and Payola.
Right.
And HarperCollins was owned by Sony BMG.
Right.
So some of the stories in my book dealt with some of their labels. So they told me to keep the $100,000 advance, but I couldn't put out the book for 7 years. So that's why I waited 7 years to put out the book. I changed it, updated it, and made it more current. But I was like, damn, they're stopping me from putting out a great book and telling me keep $100,000.
See, but see, that again goes back into these parent companies, back into corporations you were talking about.
Yeah, and they're all tied together.
Wow.
And, HarperCollins owns Fox.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, yeah, but when you're these mega corporations, it's easy to silence you. You know,
Right.
like I talked about Steve Harvey and Tom Joyner, all the partnerships they have. There's roads and toes that they can't step on because of the money.
Right.
And the one thing corporate America is good at is stroking the folks, the influences with money so they'll shut up.
Right.
Yep.
That is absolutely amazing. Well, we've come down to the end of our time together, and I know you've been doing it over the last couple of minutes, but what I do at the end of the interview is I literally shut the microphone off and I allow you to promote in terms of your websites, telephone numbers. You can say anything with the exception of how much the book costs, a dollar amount for your services or whatever. But at this point, we're at that point in the interview where you get the chance to promote however you'd like to promote, like your websites, telephone numbers, the book, so forth and so on. You have the opportunity to do that now, and I will definitely be in touch with you. Before the end of the day is out, this will be up on my YouTube channel, if certainly not today, by the end of tomorrow, one or the other. But most likely this is going to go up quick because I want it out there. So,
all right.
But this is your opportunity to promote.
Well, the name is Paul Porter. You can reach me IG and Twitter at Porter on Air. My book is called BlackOut, My 40 Years in the Music Business. And the word blackout is not race. Blackout is a temporary loss of consciousness. Anybody that buys the book, matter of fact, I got a cyber sale that's cheap. I won't name it. I sign the book. I put my phone number in it. Matter of fact, I'll give my phone number out. And I do this at lectures. I do it all the time because most of the time people are scared to call or text or anything. 321-745-9060. My website's porteronair.com. And I'm here for anybody, man. Anybody that wants to build or discuss any minds that we can change one at a time. I'm here. I'm available for lectures. I'm just available, man, and I appreciate you, Mark, for giving me this platform on a Saturday morning. I'm about to go out and walk my 100-pound Rottweiler and take her out to the park, man. It's 80 degrees in Florida, so don't feel bad.
No, man, you're making me jealous, but I'll deal with it. But in any event, now thank you for hitting me up on LinkedIn and for rising early to join me this morning. Man, this was a powerful interview, and more folks need to understand what we were talking about and not just come back at us, oh, you think too deep. Oh, no, we can't do that. Because it really isn't. It's back to what I was saying a few minutes ago in terms of the very industries that you would think just top of mind or just what they're about, you would think they would be life-giving when the truth of the matter is they're destroying life. And sadly, as one who loves music, who's been a musician since he's 8, who's been doing radio now for 18 years, who's been working with kids, sadly, one who's been doing it, that is really sad commentary from where we've become. And I like the way you say dumbing down the messenger, because that's exactly what's been going on, is the dumbing down of the messenger and everything else. And because the dumbing down of the message, most likely, in most cases, the message is dumb, and those dumb messages is what's impacting what we're getting in society.
Yep. And who controls the messenger? That's the issue. You know, that's why I'm my own station. There's an app, too. Just punch in The Wire 98.5 Orlando. That's my station. We do hip-hop and R&B. And we still play a couple of the dumb songs, but a lot more of the songs are more conscious, and it's working. We're the only low-power FM rated in a top 40 market in the country. So they can't tell you, you know, they'll tell you research, that's what the people want. And I didn't talk about it, but the problem is they only research dumbness.
Right.
And
that's a whole nother, man, if I had to try, that would be a whole nother discussion. Matter of fact, I'm going to have you back and we'll pick up there. What you call it, research dumbness. There you go.
You know, they just research that, and that's what they'll tell you. And that's the big lie, man.
That's exactly right.
A little critical thinking, man.
Oh my God! I can't believe you said that because
easy to see through.
Because I've said that for so long. It is amazing. Funny you should say critical, because that's the name of my blog, The Critical Thinker. And
Okay.
but the research is on dumbness, absolutely. On that note, we will definitely pick up on that when I have you back. But on that note, thank you so much, man. I wish you nothing but the best. I will certainly be promoting BlackOut myself on all my social media sites. I've already started, but I will definitely continue. And like I said, before the day is out, I'll have downloaded it from Amazon.
Hey, happy holidays to all, man. Make this 2020 the best yet, man.
I know that's right. Same to you. All right. Take care now.